Welcome to the Parrot Podcast with your host, Sandra, where we talk about all things parrots.
I didn't need the CITES import or export permit crossing from Canada to US, but US has this fish and wildlife.
Yes, I know. Fish and Wildlife
Like
Association or something like that. So
Fish and Wildlife Services. So they actually the main institutions that regulate the entering and exporting the wildlife. And only if you're inside the US, you can apply for a pet traveling passport, multiple crossing the border, which I'm about actually to do. And then crossing the border to Canada by car, multiple times, no problem. But I still need to contact CFIA and stuff. But
so to go from Canada to the US or the US to Canada, you just need the paperwork from the Fish and Wildlife Association and CFIA?
No, I wish. So from Canada side, it's just CFIA. Thanks God. CITES where I was asking CITES if to go to the state. To go to the state is fish and wildlife import permits and inspection. So so they have a list of designated ports. So you cannot just cross wherever you want. They have a list of the places you can actually go, and you have to schedule an appointment 72 hours prior your entering, and the inspector comes to the place, meets you, sees the birds, and does a huge amount of papers, stamping and stuff, and gives you all the verifies everything, and then you're free to go. Fish and Wildlife, that's one who's given that permit, and the second one you need from the US to enter is one sec. I have USDA, it's Agricultural Department.
Yeah,
that one actually regulates the healthcare, and they may require the quarantine. That's the most hard part, because in the US
you cannot go to quarantine, I think, right?
In
a quarantine facility,
because US they also have a map on the list of the
avian flu
spread. And you cannot stop. I will not stop. I just need to go home, please. It's been so long. But we were driving all the way from Canada, crossing the border and driving all the way to California. So that took us a couple of days.
Wow. Okay. So let's jump back to the quarantine part, because this is a really interesting one. And as I mentioned before, every country has different requirements for quarantine, for paperwork and things like that.
Inside US, as long as I know, it's New York or Miami. No even facility in California. So I need to carry my bird there, really?
Oh my God.
And then how should I bring it back?
That's crazy. And the thing that also is really stressful about a quarantine facility is you don't know, can you see your bird every day? Can you visit? How are they taking care of them? How are they feeding them?
As long as I know you can't.
And who's looking after them? I feel like it's stressful for the bird too, because, I'm very specific with my bird. I'm very specific with her diet. I'm very specific with, her day-to-day activities, her enrichment, her happiness. And, putting them in a quarantine facility is really stressful, I feel like, for the bird, but also for the owner. And you don't know what they're doing or how they're being cared for. For me, I'm just put me in there with her. I'll stay in the quarantine facility.
Exactly. And Canada, it also has that map of the spread, which is changing all the time. And we were in the green zone, and we just finished the quarantine. And actually, that's agricultural department. With fish and wildlife, you can just go online and you can apply for that stuff. But in that agricultural, I needed an US address, mail line, to apply and to just create an account, which I didn't have. I've never been to US, I have no address yet. So I was just emailing them, and they were sending me some forms in the email, and I was sending them back, and it's $150 fee for that application. And so I didn't know till the end if they're releasing me or not. So they issue in that import permit from their side, and it's saying like requires quarantine or doesn't require quarantine, and they were the last institution I was getting the permit from. So yeah, so cross the border from Canada to US, you need CFIA export permit, health certificate again. CFIA provides some their inspectors that you need to go to. You need to schedule an appointment with Fish and Wildlife and get the import permit from Fish and Wildlife, and you need import permit from USDA, Agricultural Department in the US. Yeah, and some customs they just you can just come and say, hey, this is the parrot, I'm taking the parrot. Maybe they make you to pay the fee, it depends on the country, it's not much, so they just checking the bird. Yeah. Yeah, and we were crossing the border by land, so we couldn't, so between Canada and US, maybe there's a couple of ports where you can go, so we were driving like this, not straight, we were doing like the whole circle. And same with the airports, they have also a list in case you're flying, also the list of the airports you can land, not all of them, just need to check that out before buying the ticket to whatever.
And so let me ask you this, because I'm sure that people are also wondering, did you find it to be expensive or affordable traveling with a parrot when it comes to doing all the paperwork, the carrier, the flight, the reservation, and all these types of things? What is your personal experience and opinion when it comes to the cost of this?
No, in general, it's expensive. Traveling is expensive. Traveling with the pet, it's expensive. Traveling with the exotic pet, it's
expensive. Thank you.
Like, yeah,
I found the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, this is so expensive.
This is crazy expensive. And I'm saying now I need a private plane because I'm not going through all that stuff again. I'm not paying like all the stuff I'm paying to the airlines to take my bird. I already can afford like a private, not obviously, but it's my favorite joke. Like,
I know a private plane would make it so much easier. And actually, if someone can afford to fly private, I do have some good information. There is an airline, but they only fly from New Jersey in the United States and into New Jersey. They're called K9 Jets. I want to make sure I have that right. So I'm going to jump on Instagram really quickly. But I've messaged them before and I asked them, would you allow birds? Because here they are, K9 Jets. And they are a pet-friendly pay-per-seat private jet charter, and they fly with dogs. And so you can see here, like there's dogs, and I'll share some photos, and they're just on the seat, like with everybody, with their owners. And I've messaged them before and said, would you take birds? Because I get this question from people all of the time about traveling with their parrots. Because with dogs and cats, everybody does it, and there's a lot of information. With parrots, exotic pets, it's very rare and there's not a lot of information. So I messaged them and they said, as long as you have all the paperwork, then yes, we will take birds. So if you can afford it, you can go with that option. When I looked, I believe it was about $10,000 per seat. So it's expensive, but we know that flying private is expensive, right? And I think that hiring a private plane or a private jet to yourself, I don't even know what that costs, but if you wanted to fly private, I think it's $10,000. But
that's a better.
We're gonna have to start a GoFundMe.
That's a goal, you know. No, actually, but flying inside US with we were flying with Spirit. That was my first ever experience inside. And obviously on their website they're saying dogs, cats, and domestic bird. What exactly are you considering as domestic bird? Is it a chicken or what?
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, actually, because it's and they were actually mentioning that big parrots are not allowed, something like that. I was not sure, so I always contact the customer support before booking whatever and anything. And I'm saying, hey, I have a sun conure species. This is the photo. This is the bird. This is the size. Can this bird go through that? Yeah, they were saying yes, 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 yes. I said, okay, yes. But do I need any paperwork for that? And the answer was, please bring all required paperwork. I'm like, which required paperwork?
What is the required paperwork?
What is the required? What are you talking about exactly? Can I have any lease or any? They were just sending me the links on the Spirit airline website with the
pet policy
list of policies. It was so like general and it was like maybe 10 bullet points, but none of them actually were related to us. It's not a dog. We are not flying to Hawaii.
And so sometimes when you're talking with these agents, they themselves aren't really sure because parrots aren't like something that people commonly fly with.
That's a biggest problem because no one knows anything. So at the end, we don't need any paperwork. Spirit, at least. I just show up with the bird and I said, hey, there's the bird. And they said, okay, go. And it was $125 one way. So it but
$125 is not too bad.
Yeah, in cargo is way more expensive, obviously.
Yeah.
But in case you can sneak into the cabin, that's not bad, actually. So I wanted to show you the cage that we're using for the airplane.
So this is this is the carrier that you used for flying in cabin within the US. It's a soft carrier. Wow, that looks great. Where did you buy this?
Amazon. It's just an Amazon, and there are like plenty of stuff that you can find, and it's really it's light.
Yeah,
it's super light, and it has a perch, and my bird loves the perch. It's actually the second one because she destroyed the first one. Like,
oh no,
she loved it so much. The perch was like in the pieces.
Oh my gosh.
But this is how birds work.
Yeah,
it's not expensive though.
How much was the carrier?
Around $50, I would say.
Yeah, maybe that's not
even
bad.
Even less.
Yeah,
something like that.
So and I also wanted to ask about, what was I going to ask? The different types of airlines in the US that allow birds. Did you look into other options? Do you remember what they were? I know Spirit is one. I think Delta is another. Maybe United.
Frontier for sure.
Yes.
And Alaska, as long as I know.
Yes.
And United, that's a good question because I'm going to be flying with United and I will contact their support because there's, if I remember correctly, they're not saying anything about the species. So some of the airlines saying just pet, depending on the size. Some of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and do the airlines, like for example, Spirit, so that you can get the appropriate carrier that they approve to have in cabin on their airline? Did they give you like the measurements, or was it on the website?
Of course. Yeah, of course. They have their like size, which for this bird is never a problem because it's usually like even for, like it's same for dogs. So obviously even for a small dog can be there. So.
And I know that when dogs are in cabin, they're in a soft carrier that has to fit under your seat. So of course, a small parrot in a soft carrier will fit under your seat. But did you have to have food and water in there for her? Or there was nothing about that?
There was nothing about that. That was a 40-minute flight. So
yeah, domestic flights are pretty short. So I think that you probably don't need to worry about that. But with international flights, you have to have it.